tell us a little bit of history of Haskell Indian Junior College.
Okay, so first correction, it's Haskell Indian Nations University. It's gained full university accreditation since 2004. Actually, since 1994, gained its first accreditation, successfully passed its second accreditation in 2004, and then again in 2014. So it is today North Central accredited.
So when did the school start?
September 17th, 1884, they opened the doors and had a big grand celebration here.
What was the school built for? Why did they build it?
Well, it was the Training and Industrial Institute in the very beginning. So they were trying to train the students to become farmers and use the agricultural model and the idea of allotment, basically issuing them individual plots and expecting them to tend to it.
Captain Steve Pratt said that he wanted to kill the Indian but save the man. How do you think was he trying to do that, or how was he trying to do that?
Sure, well, you gotta think that he was a military general. And so everybody's good at something, and he was very good at what he did, very successful. That's why they brought him here. But he was neither an educator nor an administrator, and very heavily influential in the military and a dictative type of system. So you can see his influence was very heavily applied to the students in the earlier times.
There was a lot of kids that died here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, they died from all kinds of things. Yeah, we have about 149 kids that are in our cemetery today on the east end of campus here.
So they're still buried here?
Yeah, the youngest is 6 months and the oldest is 15 years old.
And so how is it today? What is it like today here at Haskell, the university?
As far as classes or
has it worked? That Kill the Savage Mind, has it really worked? Do you think it's worked?
Well, in all areas of, not just here at Haskell, but in all facets, of tribal life, whether it be reservation, whether it be urban, whether it be somewhere in between. I mean, you have lots of kids that grew up here in Lawrence, that are away from their reservations because their parents choose to serve, Indian country by serving here at Haskell. And so you have a variety and a diverse range. And so you see the effects, the traumatic effects that the boarding school has had on families over time, particularly at the cultural center here. And so I grew up where my culture was practiced by both my parents, and I didn't realize that the culture itself was so, deprived until I got here, and meeting all kinds of other Indians. And, I grew up in Powwood and traveled my whole life, and just understanding that, you had all these urban Indians, but even reservation Indians that came here and they didn't know anything about culture, really anything about who they were and where they came from, all because the boarding school experience took that away from generations before them. And so today I'm glad that the Cultural Center is here and is open and is an asset to the students here, because I truly believe that everything, from retention to their spiritual and mental well-being all comes through the Cultural Center, and them having the Cultural Center here at Haskell is what makes Haskell unique. Because at other schools, other major institutions, and I went to a big school before I came here, and you have like American Indian houses, which are great, they're the support system for the American Indian students that are there on campus, which are the minority in a very small percentage of the overall population. But here, the Cultural Center serves in that same capacity to provide the students with that additional type of resource or that additional support. And many of those students, turn to that just because that's the only way that they lived. You have some students that have never left the reservation or went maybe 1 or 2 hours from their reservation before they came, so it's hard for them. But having familiar things around them, or having, like to me, like woodland kids love coming in here, you know, because everything's wood. This looks like home to us, and then there's green. And so when we come to the flat plains of Kansas, it's kind of a little bit depressing when you're used to fresh rivers and water and green trees and plants and being able to smell the dirt and everything around you. And so to them, that's something comforting. And so there's many aesthetical things as well as just, you know, emotional ties that they have through hearing stories and different things that might help them to have an understanding, or it's just telling them, you know, retelling them the very stories that come from within their own communities that they might have forgotten, that some of them might have not had an opportunity to hear before. And it's the first time that they're hearing that, you know, and so just being able to provide that for them in that context as support, rather than us standing here in a linear form and dictating, okay, today in class you're going to learn, you know, concepts A, B, C, and D, and by the end you're going to be able to do E, F, and G. And so here we would rather tell them stories and, you know, help them to find their own understanding or find things to motivate them. And especially when we have high schools and other things that come through the cultural center here, I ask in advance to be notified of that and then where they come from, because I'd like to, you know, research a little bit about their school, or especially during, you know, the early springtime. We have a lot of high schools that bring kids through here, but that's basketball season, and that's one of my favorite sports. And so, you know, I follow the states and the native teams, especially, that are doing well in their states and their high school basketball. So some of them that do come through here, you know, I like to tease them or ask them about stuff or tell them about their game and stuff, and just something to connect them, you know. And so like that's what they're going to remember when they come here, that they have a familiar face, or everybody knows, you know, somebody that's not really their auntie but away from home, you know, makes them feel like they're welcome there and stuff. And so that's the concept that we hope to be able to provide to the students when they come through here. And so all those are important factors. For about the first 50 years or so, it was like that military reign, but in 1933, Dr. Henry Rollcloud came here, and he was a full-blooded Winnebago tribal member. And although not a product of the boarding schools, he identified with the atrocities that were happening here and the reform that was needed. And he became the first Native American superintendent to serve Haskell. And a few short years later, Ella Deloria, who also not a product of the boarding school, but the first Native American female to graduate from the prestigious Columbia University, came here to work at Haskell and was particularly influential in the young women here, and relearning their value and their worth and their contributions, and understanding their place in the larger tribal society as the caretakers of the traditions, of the cultures, and of the stories. And so both of those individuals very pivotal in Haskell's history, and really a turning point in which students after the 1935 actually started to come here out of free will. They were no longer forced to come here. And immediately, I mean, you know, the environment, everything, the standards for education here rose significantly, to the surprise of the administration, and the students started doing particularly well and then flourishing, and then they started